Howdy y'all, and welcome to Throwback Thursday. We got a real treat today. This is a Indian, but it's actually a Royal Enfield Tomahawk 500 1955. They only made it in this exact configuration for 1 year. The engine, this whole bike was made by Royal Enfield for the Indian company, or what was left of the Indian company went out of business, I think in '53. This is a model that was produced by Royal Enfield for what was left of the structure of that company. But this is an incredibly amazing example of one, and it's got a really good story. So let's start with what it is. It's a parallel twin, 496cc overhead valve. So it's a two-cylinder, air-cooled. You know, the valves, the cams are down here. The valves are up here. It's got these oil lines, you know, the pressurized to get oil to the top end. It's got the single carburetor. It's got the Lucas Dynamag system right there. Dyno on the top, mag on the bottom. That's all shown right there. Isn't that just neat? I mean, look at that pressure relief right there. It's got that primary cover that's one bolt holds it on kind of thing. We'll get back to that in a minute. It's a really neat looking machine. I love the way these cases are. We did a 68 the other day, and that was the updated version of this motor. And you can really see the generational step. If you notice, the engine is hanging. The frame ends right there, and it picks up again back here. Really an interesting design, isn't it? You know, it looks like that's like a pre-unit engine. I'm not sure about that, but it looks like there's space between there. Very interesting. I'm not, you know, if you all know, put in the comments. 4-speed transmission right there. 1 up, 3 down. So 1 up, 2, 3, 4 down, neutral. And this has that positive neutral finder right there. And on that 68 the other day, that was not present. That was not there. Some of the things I learned about this bike, they called it the long stroke engine. It's supposed to have a lot of torque. The horsepower wasn't so great because of the torque. You know, it was made for torque, made for be a good cruise around bike, not a race bike. It has a 3.9 gallon gas tank. That's 14.7 liters. From the factory, it came with this paint. I think they called it Indian Red. And the fenders were these aluminum fenders right here. Isn't that neat? This is supposed to be about as original as you can get. Even the pipes are new old stock Burgess, made in the day. Sat on a shelf somewhere until they got into this bike. Other interesting things about the bike, you know, it's got the telescope. I think it was one of the first ones with the Royal Enfield in with the telescoping forks. It has the swing arm rear end. Has the dual brakes on the front. So it's got 2 drum brakes in the front, actually, 2 separate drum brakes. So if you look up here, here's the brake lever. Notice the 2 cables. And so here we have a brake shoe on this side. Here's a lever right here. And then on this side, have the same thing again. Let's look for adjusters on that. The adjusters are right there behind the stays. There's one on each side. There's one over there, and there's another one right back here. So you'd adjust each brake separate from the other. You know, keep them adjusted, I suppose. The reason for that, I was told, was they had not geared up to make the wider single brake yet. And this is kind of a stopgap measure for that. This has what they call the Western style handlebars. The original handlebars that were with this bike were in really bad shape. Baxter Cycle got involved with this years and years ago. Sent the original handlebars to Hitchcock's, and they used those to be the model to make the new handlebars, Western style handlebars. So if you order a set of theirs, you look at exactly this, and it's from this bike original. The gauges are all Smith, chronographic. Also, this is another one. You know, it had the nacelle on the front, kind of like the Classic has. My Classic over yonder has that. Isn't that pretty? The tiger eyes, the whole bit. Just a gorgeous front end. So let's jump into the story, and then we'll get back to the bike. This bike was an Iowa bike, sold in Iowa, sold to a fellow. He had it for years, into the 80s. At some point or another, he sold it for some reason or another, and disappeared for years and years and years. The guy's name was Woody. Years later, decided he wanted to find a bike like the one he had, because he had such a love affair with this motorcycle. So a friend found one for him in an estate sale. It was a basket case. They went and got it. They bought it, and came with a pile of paperwork. It was in pieces. They started going through everything, and it turned out it was his original bike. This bike was his original bike. And so a lot of love and care went into putting this thing back together. And it really has quite a tale to go with it, you know. And some of the, you know, I already told you about the handlebars. Some of the other things was he ordered some aftermarket fenders for it. He had the original ones that were in bad shape. Ordered some aftermarket fenders. Well, they came and they weren't exactly right. So he spent the trouble to rebuild from the models that he had, from the fenders, the original fenders that he had, new ones. So these are like the original ones, but new. You know, other things to look at. The license plate is above the taillight, so this is flipped over so the light shines up. The pipes are up sweeping, and I'm told this is the only year that it had the up sweeping pipes. A couple other things real quick. Spoke wheels, of course. The fronts are 3 1/4 by 19. The rear was also a 19, but a 3 1/2. We talked about this already. So this was a system that they created. You have a gasket, central bolt, squeezes the primary cover onto place, and that's supposed to not leak as much. Look at this. It has a center stand. Oh, this was damaged, so they had to get a new one of these, and they found an original one, and he had it sent off to some other place. You know, had some paint color guru match everything up so it would be just right. Oh, look at this air pump right here. I was reading some of the ads for these from 1950, and one of the things they talked about, you know, the positive shifter, the aluminum fenders, but was the dual seat, had a dual seat, so that must have been a treat to have back in those days, huh? I just love the way it looks. Just a gorgeous motorcycle. You know, look at this back brake. I always like to look at those. Look at this long arm here. You know, back here, the adjuster back here. I wonder where the switch is. Oh, right here. You can't see it. It's up here behind. But that spring must pull on the switch. Has snail adjusters. I love snail adjusters. For the chain, look at this tube. That's how they were originally from the factory into the carburetor. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous work. One beautiful machine. One of these is going to be timing. The other is going to be choke. Probably a kill switch. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe the lights. Although I bet those would be down here. If you look at the new Classic like I ride over yonder, this is all right off that bike. I mean, just right off of it. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous machine. So even though this says Indian, this is at its heart a Royal Enfield, 100%. Absolutely beautiful thing. Absolutely beautiful thing. If you're in the market for a new or used Royal Enfield or Triumph, or if you need a vintage classic British motorcycle, get yourself over here to Baxter Cycle in Marnie, Iowa. Go to baxtercycle.com. They can help you out. They've got the largest collection of vintage motorcycle parts in North America. They've got great service and advice. I think they started in 1977. They've been doing this a while, so they can really point you in the right direction and get you off the ground. And if the weather is great where you're at, get yourselves out there and ride. Life is good. Wahoo!